So once again, I say this every week, it's a privilege, it's supposed to be together with you. Today is a very busy day, and this is the fourth shir I'm giving today, and shortly after this shir, I have another one, and therefore I might be mekatzer a bit, and today's shir might be a bit shorter than we usually are accustomed to. But I hope, nevertheless, it will be a choshev shir, inspiring and interesting. So we are approaching Yemei Chanukah. Thursday night, Baruch Hashem, we will be privileged, b'simcha gedola, to be makayim the mitzvah of adlokas nar Chanukah and Persumei Nisa. Shabbos Chof Aleph, the Gemara gives three options how we perform this mitzvah. Neresh ubeisai. That is the basic mitzvah. Ha-mahadrin, nelech olechem v'yechod. Ha-mahadrin min ha-mahadrin. Either moise v'hoilech or poiches v'hoilech. It is interesting that the B'is Yosef doesn't bring the option of nerish u'beisoi. And he goes directly to mahadrin min ha-mahadrin. The Rambam in Perek Daled of Hilchos Chanuka starts off just like the Gemara. Nerish u'beisoi, mahadrin nelech olechod v'yechod, and those to go to the extreme in Hider mitzvah, mahadrin min ha-mahadrin moise v'hoilech. But the B'is Yosef doesn't even give the option of nerish u'beisoi. So my understanding of the B'is Yosef, and that is not our topic today, maybe at some other opportunity, but I spoke extensively and I wrote a lot about Kiblo Alayhu Chayva. I think according to the B'is Yosef, Klal Yisrael, Kiblo Olav Chayva, Mahadin and Mina Mahadin. So Nerish u'beisoi is no longer an option. Ereshus becomes a chiyuv. And a mitzvah that was originally voluntary becomes an obligation. Kiblo Alayhu Chayva. And that is why we do not find in Shulchan Aruch the option of nerish u'beisoi. What we will primarily be discussing today is the concept of nerish u'beisoi, to define the hidur of nelech olechod v'yechod. So the Rambam, Perek Daled of Hilchos Chanuka, Halacha Aleph and Beis, the Rambam starts off with nerish u'beisoi, and there he says, "Ha-mahadrin madlikim neros keminyan anshe beisoi." Seems to be clear in Rambam that the gather of nelech olechod v'yechod doesn't mean that each and every member of the family lights his own neros. The father or the head of the family, whoever it may be, the one that lights the first ner, Madlik neros keminyan anshe beisoi. However, the Ramah, Tofresh Ayin Aleph Siv Beis, and that is the common minhag. That is our minhag, Kol B'nei Ashkenaz. Nerish u'beisoi means that each and every one lights his own neros. What is the fundamental machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramah? Bameh Hadvorim Tluyim. So in the yeshiva world, there's a very well-known mahalach of the Briskerov. The Briskerov in Hilchos Chanuka says that the Rambam and the Ramah, Lishitosam. Lishitosam from where? Very far away. Hilchos Mila. Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel. Hamal Chayzer al Sitzin she'ena ma'akven es amila. Chayzer al Sitzin ma'akven es amila in Shabbos. But Sitzin she'ena ma'akven eine Chayzer. And we find a machlokes between the Rambam and the Tur. The Rambam, Perek Beis of Hilchos Mila Halacha Daled. The Rambam doesn't mention that we're dealing with Shabbos at all. And the Rambam says, Kol zman shelo piresh, chayzer al tzitzin she'eh miyakven es amila. Piresh einoi chayzer. And the Noisei Kelim deal with the Rambam, and why not? The Turin Simaresh Samach Dalad makes it very clear, and as explained by the Bes Yosef, according to most Rishonim, we're dealing with Shabbos. In the middle of the week, of course, one is Chayzal Tzitzin Shiemi Yakvin Asamila. And the Gemara Shabbos Kuflam and Gimel explains Tzitzin Shiemi Yakvin Asamila. It still is Hider Mitzvah to remove them. So when the Gemara is mechanic between Piresh and Lo Piresh, and the Gemara says, Im Piresh Eine Chayzal Tzitzin Shiemi Yakvin Asamila, that's Shabbos. So as long as he's still busy, Lo Piresh, it is still defined as mitzvahs mila, mila is manadoichas Shabbos. In Piresh, it is no longer mitzvahs mila. He was yotze b'di eved. From now on, it's here the mitzvah. Here the mitzvah does not doichas Shabbos, doesn't override Shabbos. So the Brisker Rav explains what is the machlokes between the Rambam and all the others. The Rambam maintains there is no mitzvah of hidur, only b'shas kiyum ikar ha-mitzvah. When you are mekayim the mitzvah, you need to be mekayim the mitzvah bihidura, in the best, most respectable, most mechubedika, most beautiful fashion. But once you were yotze yedei chayva, you cannot be mekayim hidur mitzvah later. You lost hidur mitzvah. And the Torah is told about Reb Chaim Brisker. So Reb Chaim dealt with a question, a person that has two esrogim on Sukkot. One is the most beautiful esrog in the world, but it's a Safek Murkav. The other is Vadai Kosher, but it's not so beautiful. On which of the two to make the bracha? Conventional wisdom would dictate first make the bracha on the esrog that's Vadai Kosher, and then take the beautiful one to be Makayim Hidur Mitzvah. Reb Chaim, based on his understanding of the Rambam, on the Brisker Rav's understanding of the Rambam, and this interpretation of the Rambam goes all the way back to the Beis Halevi. So it's 3 generations of Gedolei Brisk, of the giants of Brisk, the Beis Halevi, Reb Chaim, and the Brisker Rav. Now, they say, first, take the esrog. That's the more beautiful one. So you have a 50% chance that you're Makayim Hidur Mitzvah. And it's not a hefsek. Anything that is associated with a mitzvah is not a hefsek. And then you have the option of taking the other esrog to be Yotze Yedei Chayva Al Sad Havadai. But if you take the kosher esrog, then you lost out Hidur Mitzvah. This is not the real topic I'm discussing today. In my shiurim, I brought the Ksav Sofer. The Ksav Sofer clearly says, no. In this very same question, first you take the Vadai Kosher. And Amai Svorim and Minchas Osher, primarily on Sukkos, Moedem Chelik Aleph, Moedem Chelik Beis, I clearly expressed my opinion you could add on Hidur Mitzvah even after you were Mekayim the Mitzvah. And I brought many rayas. But the Brisker Rav says that the Rambam and the Ramah Shitosa, according to the Rambam in Hilchos Mila, it is only when you perform the Ikar Mitzvah that you could be Mekayim Hidur Mitzvah. And that is why L'Shitosa, it is the father, the one that's matik. The first ner has the hidur of ner kol echad v'yechad. Madlik neros kiminyan anshe beisoi. But once he ends his mitzvah, not shaykh hidur, when another person is madlik the other neros. The Ramon Yoredei Reis Samach Dalet follows in the footsteps of the Bes Yosef of the Torah. It is only Shabbos in Piresh Yeini Chayzer Al Tzitzin Shiemi Yakvin. In middle of the week, of course, you do. Ramon Shitosai. Everyone likes his own can. So in Minchas Osher, Ketalmid Kotten Adan Lefnei Rabboisav Agadolim B'Karka for various different reasons. I find the Mahalach of the Brisker Rav Rochoik. I also say, Aniya Kotten, Rambam Ramon Shitosab, But we don't need to go from Orchaim to Yoredeim, from Hilchos Chanuka to Hilchos Mila. Rambam Remola Shitosom in Hilchos Chanuka Gufo. And to understand the Hiddur of Ner Lachol Echad V'Yechad, first we need to understand what does Ner Ish Ubeisoi mean. There are two different ways to understand Ner Ish Ubeisoi. According to approach number one, Ner Chanukah is no different than all the other mitzvahs of Chagim and Moyadim. It is a mitzvah which rests upon each and every individual, like all the other mitzvahs of Chagim and Moyed. Each and every Eid is mechuyev in Sukkah and in Lulav, Matzah and Moror, Kiddusha v'Avdalta, Mikro Megillah, which is a mitzvah derabona. The same applies to Ner Chanukah. Why would Ner Chanukah be different than all the other mitzvahs, which are all about Zeichel HaNes and Pirsumei Nesa, all the mitzvahs of Sholosh Regolim, of Yom Tov, of Shabbos? Purim is the most closely associated with Ner Chanukah because both are Zeichel HaNes, both are Medivrei Sofrim, and they all rest upon the individual. However, by Chanukah, one could be Moitzi or the others. Is it based on Shlichus? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's a din misuyim, a special halacha. But Ner Lachol Echad V'Yechad means one could be Moitzi or the others. But the mitzvah essentially rests on the Yochid, on the Prat, on each and every one. Or maybe Ner Ish Ubeisoi has a different interpretation. Unlike all the other mitzvahs of Yemei Chag v'Moyed, this mitzvah does not rest upon the individual, but on a collective group, Ish Ubeisoi. The group is mechuyev in the mitzvah, not the individual. And once one of the group, one of the family members, doesn't even need to be family. The group of people that reside in this house, that live together, they do not necessarily need to be family. Ish Ubeisoi means the people that live in this house. And the mitzvah rests upon them collectively. One of them has to be Madlik Ner Chanukah. So according to approach number one, each and every one has his separate chiyuv. One could be motzi all the others. So whenever one is motzi others, we need kavona from both parties. The one that does the mitzvah needs to have in mind he wants to be motzi the others, and the others need to have in mind they want to be yotze with him, whether it's shlichus b'mitzvah sheb'maisa or shomei koine b'mitzvah sheb'dibur. And if the other members of the household do not want to be yotze, then they're not yotze, and they have their own mitzvah. If our understanding would be Ner Ish Ubeisoi, a mitzvah rests upon a collective group, we don't need kavona. We don't need kavona l'hoitzi. We don't need kavona l'tzeis. Once one of the group was Madlik Ner Chanukah, they all are yotze, whether they like it or not, whether they wish to be yotze or not. What do I mean when I ask, is the mitzvah on the individual or on a group? The Pnei Yeshua and the Sfas Emes both suggest that mitzvahs Ner Chanukah is on the bias. I do not mean the same as what they mean. According to the Sfas Emes and the Pnei Yeshua, two giants, the mitzvah is on the bias. Bias meaning a house. So the Pnei Yeshua explains, because the mitzvah is Pirsumei Nesa, then it rests on the door, the entrance. This Sfas Emes says it's somewhat similar to mezuzah. Mezuzah is on the bias, so is Ner Chanukah. The way I see it, I don't mean the house, I mean the household. Do you remember the very first posuk in Chumash Shemais? Perek Aleph, posuk Aleph. Eis Yankov Ish veBeisai Ba'u. Eis Yankov Ish veBeisai. They didn't carry their houses on their backs. They didn't come with houses. They came with households. They came families. Ish uBeisai. Eis Yankov Ish veBeisai Ba'u. That is the way I understand Mitzvahs Chanukah Ner Ish veBeisai. Like Eis Yankov Ish veBeisai. I need to give examples. Otherwise, we can never fully understand abstract concepts without giving examples. Where else do we find a mitzvah that rests on a collective, on a group of people? Be'ikar and Seder Kodesh. And I'm not talking about Binyan Beis Abchira, which rests upon the entire tzibur. We all are familiar with mitzvahs hayochid and mitzvahs hatzibur. Binyan Beis Abchira rests upon Klal Yisrael, the entire people, the entire nation. The same refers to Minui Melech, Melchemes Mitzvah, Kibush Eretz Yisrael, Mechiyah Zaroi Shel Amolek. These are mitzvahs which are ala tzibur. I don't mean that. There are some mitzvahs which are on a collective group, primarily in Seder Kodesh, Hakrovas HaKorbanos. Who is responsible to be Makrav Korban Sibir and Korban Yochid? Shevet Kohuna. But Shevet Kohuna is divided into Chov Daled Mishmaros. And each Mishmar had 2 weeks throughout the year. And the Mishmar is divided into Botei Av. Each Beis Av has 1 day of the week. And a Kavas Karbonis is a collective chiyuv upon all the members of the Beis Av. If one of the Karbonis was not korev, they all are mevatel and mitzvahs say. But not all of them must actively participate in a Kavas Karbonis. They all bear responsibility that al yodam u'mibeinehem, some members of the group need to bring the Karbonis. The same refers to Achilas Kodesh. So if they did not eat Besar Korban, they all are over on the lav of Noisa. But they don't all need to eat. They all bear responsibility. Al Yodam u'mebeinehem. Some of them eat Besar HaKodesh. So the Korban, the person, the Kohen that eats Besar Korbanos, doesn't need kavanah to be moitzi the others. They don't need anybody to be moitzi them because they don't have a personal chiyuv. Their chiyuv is a collective one. So they don't need to make a shliach to eat the korban. There is no shlichus by achila. And neither does the kohen that's makrav korbanos or the kohen that eats besar hakodesh need to be moitzi the others, the other members of the Beis Av. It is a collective chiyuv resting upon a group. And when a chiyuv rests upon a group, we do not need kavonas hamoitzi, but kavonas mi sheyoitza aliyodoi. It is only when a person has an individual chiyuv and is yoitza by another party that we need kavana from both sides. So achilas kochim would be one example. Akrovas Karbonos would be another. Shmiras Hamikdash would be number 3. Who is responsible for Shmiras Hamikdash? Chof Alav Mekoymes, Alavim Shoymrim, Gimel Mekoymes, Akoyanim Shoymrim. So the Avim were divided up between Shoyarim, Mishoyarim. Once again, it's a mitzvah which rests upon a group, not on the individual. Do we find this concept elsewhere or only in Seder Kodesh? I think it is unique and very uncommon, but we do. Yibum and Chalitza. So when a person chas v'sholom lo yaleinu dies without having children, his wife needs Chalitza. Who is the one that has the mitzvah to give Chalitza? That's a mission Yevamis Dafalamites. It is a collective chiyuv resting upon all the brothers. Mitzvah begodel. But if the godel declines, he isn't up to it, then we go to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. This is a collective mitzvah resting upon all the brothers of the deceased. It is impossible for all of them to be miyabim. That would be a grave avera. That would be eishes ach shaloi b'moka mitzvah. That's a rayas chayev koros. One of them needs to give yibam or chalitz. Which one? One of them. Lechet chiladi olis. If he declines, we go to the next, and to the next. So it is a collective chiyuv upon a group. How do we define the group? It's different by each and every mitzvah. So when we're dealing with akrovas kabonas and achilas hakochim, the group is defined by the mishmar and the beis av. By chalitza, it is the brothers. By ner Chanuka, it is those that live in the house. So the definition of this collective group is different. Each mitzvah has its own definition. But it was important for me to clearly define what I mean. And I give 4 examples, 3 from Seder Kochim and 1 from Even Ezer. Shmiras HaMikdash, Achilas Kochim, Krovas Karbonis, Yibum, and Chalitza. They are slightly different. They're not exactly the same. Regarding Achilas Kochim, they could all participate. Each and every kohen could be part of the mitzvah. He doesn't need to be. Doesn't have to be. He's not mechuyev, but he could. By Yibum and Chalitza, it's impossible. It is only one of the brothers that could have the schus to be mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum and Chalitza. Cannot be more than one. By Achilas Kochim, usually it was many, but it doesn't need to be all of them. That is the way I understand Ner, Ish, Ubeison. So one approach would be a chiyuv on the individual, and the other approach would be it's a collective chiyuv on the group. And just like the one that's chalitz doesn't need to be mitzi the others. So there is a definition in the Gemara, shlichus sayu le'achim ovid. So in my Ksovam Amesechet Yavamis that were never printed, and I wish HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help me to print everything I have written, and that's quite a lot. I dealt with the question, do we mean mamish shlichus? No, we don't mean shlichus. So one of the brothers is Miyabam or Cholitz. He doesn't need the minui of the other brothers. He doesn't even need their consent. It's up to him. And therefore, yes, the concept is a mitzvah which rests upon a collective group. And that collective group is different from one suga to the other. And that is another way to understand Nereshu Beisai. How we define the hiddur of Nela Kol Echad V'Echad depends on how we define Nereshu Beisai. Because according to the classical understanding, it is Choyves HaYochid. However, one could be mitzi the others. Then, how do we define Nela Kol Echad V'Echad? Exactly the same way as we learn Kedushin Mem Aleph Amud Aleph Mitzvah B'Yoysim V'Shluchai. There are mitzvahs that you could perform at a shliach, but it is preferable to do the mitzvah yourself and be personally engaged in the mitzvah. And Rashi writes in Kedushin Mem Aleph, Ki oseh gufei b'mitzvah mekabel sechar tfei. It has an additional chashivas if you are personally engaged in the ma'isa mitzvah. So that would be the definition of Nela Kol Echad V'Echad. You could be yotze with one member, but if you have kavanah not to be yotze with him, you ain't yotze, you're not yotze with him, and you have the mitzvah for yourself. And that is the hiddur of Nela Kol Echad V'Echad. But if our understanding of Nereshu Beisai is not that one is mitzi the others, but it is a mitzvah that doesn't rest upon the individual, it's upon the group, then There is no such thing, I am mechaven not to be yotze with him, and therefore I have my personal chiyuv. No. Once one member of the household was madlik ner Chanukah, the others were all yotze. And then we will need to offer a different interpretation of ner l'chol echad v'echad. And that is the machlokas Rambam in Ramah. Let me explain. So the Rambam in the very beginning of Perek Dalet Hilchos ner Chanukah, when the Rambam brings ner ishu beisoy, the lashon of the Rambam is mitzvosoi sheyeh kol bayis v'bayis madlik ner echad. I think this lashon is clear as daylight. The mitzvah is upon the bayis. Mitzvosoi sheyeh kol bayis u'bayis madlik ner echad. Rambam Meshitosoi cannot accept the interpretation, I'm not yotze with him and therefore I have my own mitzvah. No, there's no such a thing. So according to the Rambam, ner l'chol echad v'echad is madlik neros keminyan anshe beisai. There's no Indian for each of them to be madlik his own ner. The one that's madlik neros keminyan anshe beisai, just like Moiseh v'Hoilach and Poiseh v'Hoilach. The Hiddur is more neros. It's more neros. Ner l'chol echad v'echad keminyan anshe beisai. However, the Ramah Shitosei from the din of Achsanai Tofrei Shayin Zayin. So on Tofrei Shayin Zayin we find the machlokas. Achsanai shemadlikin ola bebeisai. He doesn't need to light ner Chanukah because his wife does it for him at home. The Marshal says, if an Achsanai lights, it's a brocha levatollah. But the Ramah and the Akamoshe quotes the Maharil. And the Maharil says, no, each and every one could light for himself. So could the Achsanai. And why? The Maharil explains. Because if he wants to light himself, he doesn't want to be yotze with his wife lighting for him at home, and he's not yotze, and therefore he has the mitzvah. So the Ramah, following in the footsteps of the Maharil, maintains, ner ishu beisoy is pshat. Essentially, it's a choyves haprat. One could be moitzi all the others. Depends on kavanah. And the Achsanai, just like ner l'chol echad v'echad. If the Achsanai doesn't want to be yotze with his wife lighting at home, he's not yotze. And he has the mitzvah, he has a chiyuv. Ramah Shitosei understands that ner l'chol echad v'echad means, like mitzvah b'yosem b'shluchai, I am not yotze with another family member. I don't want to be yotze, and therefore I have my own mitzvah and my own chiyuv. So yes, the Rambam and Ramah Shitosei, but we don't have to span the ocean and go from Hilchos Chanukah to Hilchos Milah l'Shitosei. Because the understanding and interpretation and pshat of ner l'chol echad v'echad depends on the pshat and ner ish u'beisoi. Rebbe Kiva Eger, Shuvas Tinyonis Siman Yud Gimel, understands pashtus like the Maharil, like the Ramah, and that is the general understanding. And that's why it is important for me to develop this new blick, this new appreciation, this new interpretation of ner ish u'beisoi, which is based on a chiddush that is not so well known in the yeshiva world. We all are familiar with mitzvah hayochid and mitzvah hatzibur, but besides mitzvah hayochid and the individual and mitzvah hatzibur, which rest upon Klal Yisrael as a people, as a nation, there is a gather of mitzvah which is upon a group, a collective group of people, which might be bigger, might be smaller. But what is unique about this gather is the entire group is responsible that amongst them, this mitzvah will be taken care of, not only to participate. Sometimes not all can participate In Achilas Koshem, they could all eat Hakravas Karbonis, or could somehow participate. Because in some Karbonis, they divided up different avodas. Everybody should be able to take part. But of Am Hadras Melech, by Yibum and Chalitza, it is impossible. Only one could be Makayim the mitzvah. But at Tzadeh Shovesh Shebehaim is a mitzvah which rests upon a collective group. None of them have Choyves Aprat. And that is why the one that performs the mitzvah doesn't need to be mechaven, to be moitzi the others. So I just saw a comment, with Egla Arufa be an example? No. Egla Arufa is upon the Beis Din. It is a mitzvah of the Beis Din. It is Choyves HaTzibur. Yes, not the entire Klal Yisrael. It is one of the Choyves to rest upon the Beis Din. Nerisha Beis has nothing to do with Beis Din. Chilas Koshem has nothing to do with Beis Din. Yibun Chalitza have nothing to do with Beis Din. Korban Pesach is Choyves Aprat. But the fashion, the way to be Mekayim the mitzvah is Bechabura. But it's Choyves HaYochid. It's a mitzvah to say Sheyesh Bekoros. Each and every individual needs to bring the korban. Each and every individual has a chiyuv to eat from the korban. So it's not similar to this Geder Mechudish, which I explained. By Korban Pesach, it's a Korban Yochid, but it's Einoi Bo Elo Bechabura. Between all the Karbonos, it's unique, it stands apart. But it has nothing to do with the Geder we discussed today. So yes, I explained in my forum in different places. That is why by Achilas Koshem, you're Yotze the mitzvah even if you don't need a kazayis. When you need to be Yotze Yedei Choyves Achile, you need to eat a kazayis. And that is why Matzah, Moror, first night of Sukkot, you need to eat a kazayis. By Achilas Koshem, you can't miss a kazayis. Because the mitzvah is not Choyves Yochid. It rests upon the collective, upon the entire group, upon the Beis Av, and that is why there is no chiyuv for any individual kohen to eat a kazayis. So this is a very novel and unique interpretation of a type of a mitzvah. And I think there are only a handful of mitzvahs of this nature. I think I mentioned all of them, but there might be more. So many times I apologize when I give a shiur. I love to teach, but I love to learn as well. So if any of you comes up with other examples, please let me know. And I would love to learn. So, two different approaches and interpretations of Nerishu Beisai, which reflect upon Nelech Olechod V'Yechod. And that is the machlokes of the Rambam and the Ramah. Rambam Nishitosai. The Rambam defines Nerisha Beisai Sheyekol Bayis V'Bayis Madlek Nerechod. And that is why his interpretation cannot be that if a person doesn't want to be Yotze, he has his own mitzvah. No. There's no such a thing, you don't want to be Yotze. The one that lights first, the bias already was Makayim the mitzvah. And all the others were Niftar Midei Chayvasam. Rambam Reshetosai Madlek Neiris Keminyan Anshe Beisai. Another point that we explain Lafi Darkeinu, some poskim say that a Kotten Shegir Achinuch could be Madlik Ner Chanukah and part of the entire family. And the Chacham Tzvi and others wonder, how is that possible? If he's not a Bar Chiyuv, how could be a Moisi others? And I say, very first mitzvah, Mishnah Masechet Tamid. Shomerei Hamikdash, who were they? Haroivim Hoya Mishamrim, Pirchei Kehena, before their Bar Mitzvah. And the Mishnah Lamelech and Perek Ches of Hilchos Beis Abchira wonders, but they're not Barei Chiyuv. How could they be Moitzi all the other Leviim? And I say, all the other Leviim don't need to be Yotze, because it is not Choyves Aprat. And when a mitzvah rests upon a collective group, there's no need for a Bar Chiyuv to be Mekayim the mitzvah. It's a sugya meforeshes in Zvochem Tzadik Tes that Ktanim, Kohenim Ktanim could eat kosher. And it's not a problem at all. So how could a Kohen be Moitzi Gedolim? He doesn't need to be Moitzi Gedolim. So yes, kosher are eaten by Ktanim. Shomer Amigdash were Ktanim. And that is why Kohen Shagiel HaChinuch, according to some Paiskim, could be Moitzi all the other members of the family. La'alocha were Machmir. Because we're Locha, we are Machmir Keshitas HaRamah, that it is Mitzvah Saprat. And that is why our minig is that each and every member of the family lights his own Neres Chanukah. And that is why we are Machmir, that we need a Gadol to be Moitzi the others and not a Kohen Shegiel HaChinuch. So, this will be it for today. So, our shiur today was short, but I think it was full. And we discussed a gewaltige chiddush, which I did not see, b'divrei Rabbeinu Achronim. We brought a few different examples to develop this new concept of Nereshu Beisai. And we brought various different sugyas, primarily from Seder Kodshim, but not only from Seder Kodshim. One of the examples is Yibum V'Chalitza, and that is my pshat in the Machlekes Rambam and Ramah. Is nera kol echad v'yechad that one person is matat neres keminyan anshe abayis, or Shittas Ramah, which is the common minhag. Each and every one lights his own neres Chanukah and makes his own bracha. So this is a very special yontif. And the Beis Yosef writes, Yeh zohir ma'oid to Mitzvahs Chanukah, it is persumenis. And the Sefer HaKech teaches us that the Oragonos enlightens the world through an Eres Chanukah. Lamed Vav Neres. Many times I brought Medrash Pinchas le Pinchas Koratzer. Lamed Vav Keneged Ma. The HaKech says 36 hours that the Oragonos was Mishamish B'Yolam. Pinchas Mekoretz, a great disciple, a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, says, there's another Lamed Vav. And whenever I mention, and I ask the question, what could he mean? Everybody shouts out Lamed Vav Tzadikim. What would we expect from a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov? If Lamed Vav means anything, Lamed Vav Tzadikim, but no. He's referring to Lamed Vav Mesechtes of Shas Bavli. Because the Oragola shines in Torah and in Ner Chanukah. And when we sit next to our Chanukiah and we look at those beautiful natives, we need to try to imagine this is the net of Zvochem and this is the net of Menachos. This is the one of Shabbos and this is the one of Brochus. Those are the natives Chanukah. Natives that are Meir Ba'ir Torah, and that is why Chazal teaches Harogol Bener, Havin Leit Benin, Talmidei Chachamim. Let us enjoy our natives Chanukah and let them light up our hearts and our nishamis, and we should be zoicha to see B'Korah B'Yameinu Kohen. Meitu v'madlikas haneres b'menorah hamor b'beis hamikdash yabona b'mehera v'yameinu amen. Call tov to all of you. Have a beautiful day.